Hi, today I'm going to talk about my experiences when it comes to recording drums in a vintage 70s type of style. But first I'm going to record drum kit. I'm going to use 3 mics, room, kick and snare, and then I'm going to combine them in different ways. I'm first going to put it in a mix, and then I'm going to play them by themselves, the drums, so you can hear it. You can hear the difference between different settings, how they contribute and so on. And at the end, I will have a rather lengthy discussion about my experiences. All right, let's go. Now I'm going to share a bunch of my own experiences when it comes to recording drums, and it relates to the style you heard here. It's no generic knowledge about recording drums. For that you can, for instance, check out one of the many videos where Steve Albini shares his drum recording techniques. When it comes to the gear I used here, you can check out the video description. I've listed it all there. In a busy mix where you have lots of instruments competing, I think it's important to utilize the holes in the mix where reverb or other things can shine through. and by that you make another instrument pop out through the mix. And in such cases, the close miking techniques are much more powerful because you can get a much more scoop tone. You know, you have the reverb is basically in the mids, so you want to have the drums scooped then, and that's hard to obtain in distant miking. When it comes to the kick drum, I used 26 by 14 inch kick drum here, and when using big kick drums like that, when you close mic it like I did now, you're not going you're going to catch the fundamental. You're going to catch some of the overtones. So usually close miking, it pays off to have a smaller kick drum. So here the room mic had a better position to pick up the low end from the kick. It was actually too close, that one also. One thing that really pays off when it comes to drums is where you position them in the room. They can sound completely different by that. So you should really experiment with that. And especially if the room is not very good, that can make a huge difference. I put it in the corner here to kind of intensify the sound. You could hear that when I applied the limiter to the room sound, my playing went from average to maybe lower average to kind of a good groove. But it was the limiter who provided the groove and not me. So it really pays off to know how to use a limiter on the room sound, because if you can't play in the time, the limiter can, because you punch the note and the limiter compresses the sound, and you can set how fast should it compress the sound and how fast should it release it. So you get the breathing effect there. So that's a really powerful tool. And when it comes to tight rhythmic playing, as you heard in the most naked setups here with only one mic, for instance the room, you could hear that in front of each kick I kind of hesitated on the hi-hat. So it's kind of like that. But there, as I said before, you can use a limiter. You can use a reverb that breathes. You can pan the drums in such way that they pop out through a hole in the mix, and it sounds rhythmic anyway. Staying at the subject of making yourself sound competent. To me, it's hard to play double kick hits. It usually kind of stops. It kind of breaks the what should call it. It provides with retardation to the groove. So you could hear that when I had all the mics in. So in for instance the very first and second setup here, I took the close mic of the drums and I muted the first kick, and the second was also with the close mic, so you get do instead of do. So that's a good way to kind of control whether the drums feeds the groove forwards or it kind of holds it back. When it comes to the snare here, it's really convenient, I think, you have a mic which you can position at different places, closer to the ring, or to the surrounding of the snare. You have more tone, and closer to the middle you have a deader but more bass heavy tone. So it's three parameters basically that you work with here: the mic position, and then I used my my hat here. I put it on the drum to dampen it. And then where you hit on the drum makes a huge difference. And then the amount of compression you have on the close mic. So that's actually 4 parameters. So you tweak those and you find something that sounds good and then play it. And then to do that, obviously you need isolation headphones. Otherwise you won't hear what is fed into the mics and gets recorded. One other experience that I have in rock and roll drum recordings is that in the room, when you record the drums, they ring quite a bit, you know, a tone rather than just a transient. My experience is that if you have a bit more tone in the room than you wish on the track, it's gonna sound good. Otherwise, it might sound too dead. In most of the drum recordings I've had here on the channel, I've used an AKG C414, basically positioned like the room mic was here. And then a couple of meters from that one, I've had at basically the same distance from the drums, I've had another condenser, and that's the 451e instead. So what I've done there is to compress the 451e. I've aimed it a bit more at the hi-hat and the crest cymbal. Then I pan the compressed mic to the right and keep the uncompressed and much more punchy bass-heavy mic in the middle. Then I usually place the instruments centered and to the right, and only have carefully picked out instruments that approaches the left. That way you can have a pretty dense mix and still have an ambient drum sound that cuts through. Then there is you know, when it comes to all recording, you shouldn't optimize the individual drums. The interesting thing is how they sound combined. Then obviously then you have other styles, like for instance the Mick Fleetwood's drums on Rumors, which are super dry. They're probably completely isolated from each other. Just a great sound. There you probably can optimize all you want, and they did so successfully on that album. Another interesting thing to note is that in my other videos I usually have a very ringing drums, kind of like Bonham-esque sound, and then I'm talking about the tone, not the playing. And the interesting thing is this dry, much more kind of dampened 70s, a little bit more modern tone, is the exact same tuned drums with the mic at the room mic at the exact same place. So the damping takes you a long way, damping and mic positioning. That's basically the difference between Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin. Different drumming, of course, too, but that's more of a part of the difference than one might think. Maybe you noticed that when I showcased the room mic, it sounded a bit boxy here. And if I were to use a setup with only that mic or only 2 mics, I would have shifted it slightly to have a more balanced tone. It can be enough, really slight changes there. But now I think it contributed well to the more scooped, close miking tone. Another thing that's really cool, I think, is to use stuff in the room to just control the room ambience and dynamics. It's free. For instance, on the Billie Jean, the Michael Jackson song, the engineer Bruce Swedin actually built some stuff in the room that he positioned in between the drums and so on to get that great tone. Everyone has their different positioning of the drums that where they're put in the room, and that contributes to their sonic signature. But for someone like me that only plays drums to record them and only quite simple things, then it pays off to to actually learn how to play the drums, positioned in the room such that it's easy to pick up stereo image with a few mics. And finally, if something sounds good, but other things indicate that it's not a good idea, then you should ignore the latter, because it is a good idea if it sounds good. All right. Cheers.